hello everyone. I'm Elisa Sherman. I'm the CEO of Ellementa, and this is our January webinar. I'm really excited to start the new year off with a great topic about CBD for daily use as a daily supplement. Can you do it? Is it good for you? Is it bad for you? What is it? And extra excited to have Dr. Jessica Knox here. She's been on our webinar several times before. I think you did the microdosing one. Yeah. That was back in April of last year. So we love having you here. We love having the fact that you're coming back here. And I think this is a wonderful topic for us to talk about. And you said you're in California. What's the weather like right now in California?
I'm in Oakland, California. It was pretty gray today. We had some drizzle and rain. It's clearing up tonight, so hopefully we'll have a sunny day tomorrow.
All right. So just anyone who hasn't attended this before, so you know how it works. We do this little intro right now, so you see we are human, we are real. Then I press a couple of magic buttons and we end up with our slide presentation. We go through that presentation and then break for Q&A. You can at any time type in your questions, as Erica had said, into the Q&A box. There's like a little button for that, or into the chat box itself, and we'll be looking at it periodically and trying to respond to your questions as you type them. But during that Q&A section, we'll get to as many as we can. And then we come back again after that video, we come back to the slides and give you a little bit more information, then we're done. So I try to be really mindful of time. I'm going to get started. Are you ready? All right. Good. Yay. All right. Let me press these buttons. Oh, yeah, that's right. I have to now turn off my video. See you all in a little while. And press that button, press that. And here we go. And away we go. Yes. So this webinar is brought to you not only by Ellementa, but by our sponsor, Frontier Jackson. And we are so grateful to our sponsors. We can't do what we do without their support. And we are careful with the sponsors that we are working with. We make sure that we have tried their products. And when we get back to the video, I'll show you some of the products I happen to have on hand from them. But it's something that we feel very strongly about. We want you to know about quality products and brands who really care about you, get their products tested. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute and how important that is. But yes, CBD as a daily supplement, that's our topic this month. So our goals for these webinars, always to empower you with better information about CBD for health and wellness, and to introduce you to, I'm going to talk a little bit about True Potency. Obviously, we're talking about Frontier Jackson as well, and Ellementa. So this is about your wellness journey. Every wellness journey is unique, and it's also very complex. When it comes to plant medicine, it is not going to be the same for everyone. So you have a complicated life. You might be taking care of kids, your partners, aging parents, even your circle of friends. Everyone's turning to you for support, and you need to take care of yourself. So Ellementa is really all about us taking care of ourselves first and having the knowledge so we can take care of the people we care about. So we're here to support you in your wellness journey. Now, Frontier Jackson, there's photos, but I'll show you the real things in a little while. They are full spectrum CBD derived from hemp, organic, federally legal, everybody, hemp. And they have a pretty robust profile, as they say, with 90% CBD. And they're really clear. Like I said, testing results are on their website, which gives me a lot of peace of mind. And so that third-party verification, the lab testing, it is not required of CBD companies. So that's one of the things that we're going to reiterate, but I'll say it right now. When you're looking at CBD products, look to see if they have paid the extra money to get tested. So Frontier Jackson does. They're located in the Midwest, and they have a little offer for you at the end of this. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But first, let me tell you briefly about Ellementa. For anyone who doesn't know what Ellementa is, maybe you just saw this in social media and you decided the topic was great and you wanted to know more. Ellementa is about empowerment. We empower you through knowledge, and we do that in webinars like this. We have a book club where we talk to authors of wellness books. We have events, in-person local events in over 60 cities across North America. We are also coming up in Puerto Rico, we're in Jamaica. So we're not just in the States, we're expanding, but it's all about bringing women face to face or with experts to learn, to exchange information, to tell stories, share stories about their experiences with cannabis and CBD. I want to know a little bit about you. So this is the interactive portion at the beginning. We'll do the Q&A later, which is also interactive, but tell me, a poll is going to pop up. It's super magic. This is Erica's thing. The poll will come up. Do you take CBD on a daily basis? So it's very easy this time, yes or no. So if you could just take a moment, you can click that. We can't click it, but I'm just really curious to see how many of you are already taking CBD on a daily basis. And what's really interesting is those who are, I'm also kind of curious, you know, how much research you did beforehand. There's still a lot we don't know, but there's a lot of research out there that tells us what CBD can do for us. I'll give you a few more moments to click yes or no. Usually we have multiple choice, so this is a really easy one to do. So let's see, what's our result? It's almost even, but a little more of you do take it on a daily basis. Later on the Q&A, we'll probably ask you a few questions just to learn a little bit more about that. All right, on to the next slide. Well, it's introducing Dr. Jessica Knox. You saw her live a moment ago. You'll see her live again during the Q&A. I actually would like her to give a brief intro. You obviously see some facts right there, little bullet points, but I think it's a little bit better to hear it straight from Jessica. So Jessica, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Hello?
Sorry, I still had myself on mute.
I figured. I was about to say unmute, unmute. Go for it.
As I was saying, I would happily introduce myself. So I am as it says here, I'm a preventive medicine physician. I was trained in the conventional Western medical model. I finished my residency in 2015. And almost immediately after finishing my residency, I started working in the cannabinoid medicine space. And I did that because already as a young doctor, I was very frustrated with what our conventional model seemed to be, which was, for me in my primary care clinic, largely managing laundry lists of prescription medicines while very often not seeing my patients get any better. So that was very frustrating for me, you know, as somebody who went into medicine hoping to heal people and change the world. That's not what I was doing. But at that time, my mother, who is a retired anesthesiologist now, but retired into cannabinoid medicine herself, was seeing patients and helping manage their cannabis medicine care, and was seeing just incredible results of you know, healing, improved quality of life, just seemingly miraculous stories with patients using cannabis medicine. And, you know, eventually we come to find out it's actually not a miracle. It's the endocannabinoid system. We all have this really cool thing called an endocannabinoid system that I know Eliza will go over briefly in a little bit. But, you know, we were just sort of amazed to learn about this incredibly powerful system in our bodies that was not taught to us in medical school or residency, but is so important to health and wellness. And so my mom and I, and my father and my sister, who are also doctors, all sort of transitioned to the cannabinoid and endocannabinoid medicine space to to take care of patients in a model that we felt more aligned with our own values. So we call ourselves endocannabinologists. We are specialists in the endocannabinoid system. And so cannabis is one of our very important tools that we use to heal the endocannabinoid system, but we also use other lifestyle modalities like nutrition and massage and exercise and deep breathing and you name it. Any of the mind, body, spirit therapies you've heard of is working to balance the endocannabinoid system. And so that is what we focus on.
I love it. Endocannabinology.
Yes, rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, it's a great word. It's a great word. Well, let's go. Let's get on with it. And like you said, I'm going to give a couple of brief overviews of aspects of cannabis and the endocannabinoid system. But first, reiterating the fact, we're talking about plant medicine. It doesn't always come with instructions, but the more that the industry progresses and things are more manufactured, they are using a little bit more of that pharmaceutical model where you have a label that tells you dosages, but it's still quite individual. The way that the closer you are to the natural plant, it's going to react differently in you than it might in somebody else. It all depends on your internal systems. So just keep that in mind, that it's not exactly pull it off the shelf, read the label, follow the label, and you'll get exactly what it says. So that is true with any kind of plant medicine and herbal medicines. Just keep that in mind. The endocannabinoid system, I like to try to keep this as Reader's Digest as I can, but the endocannabinoid system is a system within our bodies. It's within the bodies of mammals, and it is laying across all the other systems that we know about: the nervous system, reproductive system, respiratory system, circulatory system, all the different systems in our bodies that we learned about in science class. What we didn't learn was that there's this other system that modulates, that moderates, that manages or affects all of the other systems, and that's the endocannabinoid system. It wasn't really identified until the late 80s, early 90s, when scientists were doing research on cannabis, and they discovered all these receptors throughout our bodies and our brains that were reacting to cannabis. So trying to figure out, why does cannabis do what it does to us? Well, it's because we have a system in our body that naturally produces chemical compounds like the compounds that are in cannabis, the cannabinoids. In us, they're called endocannabinoids. In plants, they're called phytocannabinoids. But there's this connection there between those chemicals and reactions between those chemicals. And that is why when you hear cannabis can affect pain, and it can affect insomnia, and it can affect inflammation. Why can it do so many things? Because it has so many cannabinoids in it, and it's interacting with different parts of our bodies and our brain. So cannabinoids are chemical compounds. There's over 100 of them in cannabis, and they include THC, which you know about, that sort of gives you the altered state of mind. CBD, which we now know a lot more about and hear about, and is currently, if it comes from the hemp plant, legal in the States. And I put that in quotation marks that you can't see, only because in certain places it's still not really allowed. So you always have to be very careful by saying it's legal everywhere, because it's not. But CBD is another cannabinoid. CBN is a cannabinoid, CBG, CBC, and then there's CBDA, and there's THCA and THCV, and so many variants as well, just chock full of these chemical compounds. And other plants have them. Echinacea, for example, has cannabinoids, but not as many as cannabis. So another chemical compound that's very prevalent in cannabis are the terpenes. And Emma Chasen, who also is one of our experts that we love to have on webinars, calls it the aromatherapy of cannabis. So if you think about what makes food taste and smell and the color, there are all kinds of food and plants. It's the terpenes. So it makes a lot of sense when you think about all of these terpenes in cannabis that align with terpenes and other plants that we know. So lavender has linalool, a terpene that is relaxing, a little sedating. Well, cannabis has it too. And pinene in pine trees, for example, cannabis has that as well. It's more stimulating. It can also be an antibacterial. Limonene is in citrus and it's also in cannabis. Again, can be stimulating in terms of your mood, can be used as an antiseptic. Myrcene is in mangoes, also in cannabis. An interesting thing to note, I've learned this from our experts, myrcene is not really a good terpene for women in menopause. So keep that in the back of your mind, because if you're using a cannabis product that has a lot of myrcene, and if you're menopausal, it just might not be making you feel very good. So that's a little bit of the basics of the chemical compounds within cannabis and why it's interacting the way it does with our bodies and our brain. But we are here to talk specifically about CBD, and I am turning this over to Dr. Jessica Knox. Can we talk a little bit about CBD here?
Yes, absolutely. So CBD is still sort of the cannabinoid of the moment. It is everywhere and in everything, and for good reason, though, as we'll get to, there is some, some amount of caution we need to take. But CBD is everywhere because it is this really amazing compound. As Aliza said, it's called a phytocannabinoid. It works on our endocannabinoid system, and it seems to be able to do a lot of different things to make us feel better or help us heal or recover from illness. So CBD comes from the cannabis plant. It is one of over 100 phytocannabinoids that the cannabis plant produces. And after THC, it's typically the most abundant phytocannabinoid in the cannabis plant. You'll see at the bottom of this slide, it refers to both cannabis and the industrial hemp plant. And I think it's always important to sort of clarify what the difference is, because I think that's still a very common point of confusion for a lot of people. What is the difference between cannabis and hemp? They're all the same plant family, really. And what is considered industrial hemp is simply a difference in the concentration of THC in a plant. So if you have a cannabis plant that has more than 0.3% THC by dry weight, that is considered cannabis or marijuana. If that plant has 0.3% or less THC by dry weight, that's then considered an industrial hemp plant. And sort of by that definition, industrial hemp plants, in those plants, CBD is the most abundant phytocannabinoid present, simply because the THC content has to be so low. But regardless of that, CBD is a natural plant medicine, meaning that when you are getting CBD, you're not just getting CBD, you're also getting a whole host of other powerful plant components that, again, Aliza already alluded to so lovely, which is the other phytocannabinoids, but also terpenes, which have their own medicinal benefit in addition to sort of modulating the way the cannabinoids themselves work. You have flavonoids, you have fatty acids, you have all of this wonderful sort of melange of healing phytochemicals from this natural plant medicine that also produces CBD. As you've heard, we have an endocannabinoid system, which is what allows CBD to be an effective medicine for us as humans. Other mammals, as Aliza said, also have an endocannabinoid system. And so that's also why you're seeing, CBD dog treats and CBD kibble and all of those things come out, because our pets also have endocannabinoid systems that CBD works on. Another really cool thing about CBD, and really the other phytocannabinoids, is their effect is not limited to just the endocannabinoid system. CBD itself has over 65 different types of receptors that it acts upon. And so that's one of the reasons why we see CBD being able to be effective or helpful in so many different conditions. And so, yes, it is nourishing and healing. We can use it both in chronic and acute settings to help people manage issues that may be making them feel unwell, or maybe taking away from, from their quality of life.
One of the things before we move on to the next slide, I wanted to mention is when we were talking about the difference between cannabis plant versus hemp plant, and it's really the same plant family, is if you think about it, when cannabis was made illegal, but people were still growing it, and they were growing it mostly for the effect, the mind-altering high effect. They were really breeding it so there'd be way more THC and suppressing the CBD. And so it's not until more recently that once CBD has sort of come to the consciousness as being valuable, and research is showing that it is, that the plants are now being grown again to be richer in CBD and richer in all the different cannabinoids. And so speaking of research, can you talk a little bit about, not necessarily just what's on the slide, but your own research and knowledge of the research? What is it saying CBD can do?
Yeah, so the research is so important. I think, first a little aside, and then I'll get back to the actual question. But I think it's still very common for sort of institutional medicine and a lot of clinicians to say, oh, we just don't have enough research. Even the FDA is saying we just don't have enough research to say whether cannabis or CBD is safe. There's actually a lot of research, like a lot of research. If you go to PubMed and you put in CBD or cannabidiol or cannabinoid or endocannabinoid system, you will find tens of thousands of articles about these things. What we don't have a lot of right now is are clinical studies necessarily. So not a lot of studies of CBD in humans for particular conditions. There are some exceptions to that, of course. Seizures being one of the big exceptions. Epidiolex was approved by the FDA because there were clinical trials on that CBD based medication. But most of the CBD research that is out there is preclinical, meaning that it's done at a cellular level or on animal models, where they're using, rats, or it's very commonly rats or monkeys or whatever it may be as a research animal to study the effects of CBD. That said, people have been using cannabis for a very long time and CBD for several years now. And so we do have a rich source of anecdotal data, meaning personal stories of patients using CBD, and that anecdotal data is commonly, I think it's commonly discounted by the medical field, which I think is really too bad, because it's real life evidence that impacts real life patients. And so, we as clinicians, my family, we see patients who are already using cannabis and using CBD because they are medicines that are available depending on which states you're in. And they're medicines that are very effective for people. And so, we've found that we have to take the preclinical research we have, the, oodles of preclinical research we have, and apply that to our human patients in a pragmatic and safe way. And we find that our patients often do very, very well with CBD and cannabis medicine. I would say, chronic pain is still the most common reason that patients come to see us. Anxiety is another very common reason. Sleep problems, which often go hand in hand with anxiety, depression. Those are probably the most common reasons people come to see us. And then we, also have our seizure patients and our cancer patients, et cetera. But for those, for those top sort of quantitative conditions we see, CBD is amazing. So you see here, CBD has anti-inflammatory properties that make it a good option for chronic pain management. And that, that's also one of the reasons that I think CBD is a great preventive medication, because it is anti-inflammatory. And a lot of our chronic diseases today are diseases of inflammation. And so using CBD as an anti-inflammatory in general And then as an anti-inflammatory in the setting of pain can be extremely effective. CBD is also very popular these days because it is a great anxiolytic or anxiety reducing substance that helps people get through their day with less stress. It might help their mind slow down so their mind isn't racing and they can sleep better.
Mm.
And so I think we have, even when the double blind randomized controlled trials are not there to show what CBD does versus placebo or versus the prescription medication, we have millions of patients at this point to show us that CBD is effective. It's safe, overwhelmingly safe, especially if you start to compare it to most of our prescription medications.
Mm-hmm.
And as every day goes by, we're getting more and more of that sort of very coveted clinical trial evidence to show us that CBD is an effective medicine.
Excellent. Well, for those, I think it was 43% who are not taking CBD daily. Maybe some of you have not even tried it yet, and that's why you are interested in this webinar and learning more. Let's talk about how CBD makes you feel. I think it's a misnomer that you don't feel anything because you just finished talking about the fact that it could relax you and de-stress or remove some of that anxiety. So that is making you feel something.
Mm-hmm.
But how does it make people feel? Like, what do you hear from your patients especially?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think people ask this question because, it's so commonly stated that CBD is not psychoactive. And, the thing that we associate with cannabis or marijuana is, oh, well, you get high. And so if CBD isn't going to make you get high, then what do you feel? And first, we always like to tell people that CBD is in fact psychoactive, right? Psychoactive means that the substance is changing your cognition or your behavior or your mood. So purely by the fact that CBD can reduce anxiety makes it psychoactive. It is not, however, intoxicating or euphorogenic. It doesn't cause the high that THC does. But when people are using CBD daily and they're not ill, if they're generally well people, they might not notice a difference because CBD is in there just sort of managing inflammation and sort of keeping things in balance. But if you're not having symptoms, then you might not notice anything is different. However, for folks who are trying to manage something, you're managing anxiety, or you're trying to help sleep, or you're addressing pain, or certainly if you're addressing seizures or something more serious like that, you should actually find some symptomatic relief with CBD when you're getting to the right dose. And that is a process that can take some trial and error, or as my dad likes to say, time and titration. But ultimately, one of the things that I think is so beautiful about CBD and cannabis and plant medicine in general is that with appropriate time and titration, you can dial into a very precise dose that is just right for you and your system. And I think that's really cool. And it's something that we don't often do in conventional medicine. But as you stated earlier, Aliza, we all have, different systems. Our endocannabinoid systems are all at a different level of tone, meaning some people might be more sensitive to CBD, other people are less sensitive to it. We have different pharmacogenetics, meaning that some of us might be fast metabolizers of CBD, some might be slow metabolizers. So if you are a slow metabolizer of CBD, you might feel more effect at a lower dose than somebody who's a fast metabolizer. It's interesting. There are actually some tests starting to come out to help us, determine who is a fast versus slow metabolizer. But, in general and historically, these are things that people have had to sort of figure out through that trial and error and time and titration processes. I think another common misconception about CBD is that it is sedating, that CBD itself puts you to sleep. At low doses, which, might be your therapeutic dose, CBD is actually stimulating. It can help you know, sort of make you more alert and more on point and more creative. It's at higher doses of CBD that we start to see some of that sedation. But as I mentioned earlier, we think people get a lot of sleep benefit from CBD because it does sort of help mellow things out. You might feel stimulated, but you're not sort of running your mind so quickly. So that just sort of relaxation can help you fall asleep. It's great that you included some potential side effects down here: nausea, fatigue, irritability. Most of the side effects that we are aware of from CBD were actually, sourced from the clinical trials of Epidiolex. And so if people don't know what Epidiolex is an FDA-approved medication made by a company called GW Pharmaceuticals. It's based in the UK, and it is a cannabis-derived CBD medicine. And so it was approved for these very serious seizure disorders, and is effective, but because it is mostly a CBD isolate in some other inactive ingredients, it takes much higher doses to be effective. And so, so they found that patients tolerated those doses less well than they tolerated broad or full spectrum CBD, which I know we'll get to in a couple of later slides as well. But they also saw some of the side effects associated with CBD: the nausea, fatigue, irritability, stomach upset. Those patients had some reversible liver toxicity, but I think, again, it's important to note that those patients were getting very high doses of isolated CBD that we very uncommonly use in our practice. We absolutely champion full spectrum, or if not full spectrum, broad spectrum CBD, because those products allow you to take lower doses of CBD. And those products also benefit from what's called the entourage effect, where all of the other phytochemicals in that product helps sort of balance and mitigate and even enhance the effect of the CBD. This last comment on the slide alludes to the fact that the endocannabinoid system often needs to be primed, especially when you're first starting out with cannabis. So, our endocannabinoid system it's very sort of plastic and responsive. It's constantly working to balance our body amidst stresses and, toxic invaders and all of these things. A sort of a stressful lifestyle or an unhealthy lifestyle can really dampen the health of your endocannabinoid system. And so sometimes when you're first introducing cannabinoids, your system needs a few exposures before it's like, oh, hey, we know what that is. We know that we need to put out cannabinoid receptors to interact with that thing. And so when people are starting to dose themselves with CBD or another cannabinoid, we encourage them to start at a low dose and stay at that low dose for a few days before starting to increase, just so your system has a chance to sort of catch up and figure out what's going on.
Interesting. All right. So in the interest of time, I'm going to sort of breeze through the next two, but if I leave anything out that's critical, let me know, because I really want us to get now to the nitty-gritty of the dosing and the idea of CBD as a daily supplement and what those doses look like versus someone who really needs some acute care. So let's just go through. You mentioned a few things. You mentioned CBD isolate. So for anyone who doesn't know, that CBD can be isolated out of the cannabis plant matter or the hemp plant matter. It's obviously a laboratory process where it is pulled and isolated and is pure CBD. Now, there is a place for pure CBD in the case of FDA-approved medication. Also, in some cases, it can be effective. It does have effect, but also, as Dr. Knox said, broad spectrum or full spectrum can have more therapeutic benefit, and that's what you use in your practice, right? Is something more broad or full. And the difference between that, my understanding is that full spectrum Does contain some THC, or broad spectrum, the THC has been removed, but the beauty of them, they're closer to the natural plant itself and are filled with all the other cannabinoids, terpenes, and like you said, flavonoids, etc., that are in the plant. So it's a richer, more plant-based medicine, where CBD isolate would be more like a pharmaceutical single chemical. Is that a good way of explaining it?
Yeah, I think that was great. I would add a couple of things. One is broad spectrum doesn't necessarily have to mean THC has been removed. Something else could be removed to make it broad spectrum. But in this day and age, in our current landscape, it almost always is THC that has been removed. And that, that is for reasons of being, compliant with regulations. It's very much an important sort of marketing label to be able to put on something. There's no THC, which makes people feel more comfortable. And it also might be something that people feel more comfortable with if they're in a workplace or a setting where they might be getting drug tested and they're scared that they might have a positive cannabis test from using a CBD product. And, I think, and we'll get to this, but that sort of points to the caution we have to take when you are looking at lab results for products or the certificate of analysis, because, there's been research that has shown that some CBD products on the shelves that claim to have no THC actually do have THC, or might not have any CBD, or any number of things. So, it's important to know what the product you're getting is claiming to be, what that means, but also being able to verify what that product contains is incredibly important.
Definitely. Really quickly, different types of CBD products. These days, we're seeing it in everything, but a lot of us are familiar with oil-based tinctures. And I put tinctures in quotation marks only because the traditional tincture was usually alcohol-based. It could also be glycerin-based, but it's in a dropper bottle, pulled out with a dropper. Ingestibles versus edibles. So edibles would be more food, even gummies and candies or cookies. But ingestibles are your tablets, your capsules. Then there's topicals, anything that you would rub on your body. Come to think of it, they also have CBD now in shampoo and conditioner and in toothpaste.
And leggings.
In leggings? What?
Yes.
Well, I guess
your
that's
athleisure.
Oh, yeah, there you go. It's a topical application. Transdermals are topically applied, but they have something in them, a chemical that, or even a terpene that will make them more easily absorbed so that it can break the blood-brain barrier so it goes into your bloodstream. So a transdermal patch, for example. Drinkables, it's in water now, soda, tea. Then there's oral sprays and even suppositories. Pretty much all different forms. So that's really important to know that you can get it in a different form. Like if you don't like pills, there are chewables, there are all kinds of other forms for you. But let's talk about dosing now, because this is really getting into the heart of what does it look like as a daily supplement versus, I've got acute anxiety, how do I take it?
Yeah, and so when people, that sort of generally well person I was talking about earlier, who might just be taking CBD as a daily supplement because they've read that it's good for them, for those folks, we'll often say somewhere between 20 to 50 milligrams CBD is a good place to be, because you're not necessarily trying to address anything specific, but you can get that amount in, and it'll get in there and do some good anti-inflammatory work. And you'll be doing a good thing for your health in general. For folks who are trying to manage particular symptoms, for them, we take a little bit more cautious of an approach, because we do want to dial into the exact dose that gets them the relief they need without overdoing it. And overdoing it means, they're paying for more medicine than they need because they only needed 5 milligrams, but they're using 10. Overdoing it might mean because they're, using so much oil that they are getting some abdominal upset, you know, any sort of unwanted effect that they might not want to get. What we're doing by sort of cautiously dosing is trying to find what is often called the minimum effective dose. So the lowest dose at which you're getting the relief you need without getting any unwanted side effects. And so, you know, we're often asking our patients to start with doses as low as 2.5 milligrams. That would be considered a microdose. And for some people, that's all they need. And so they can stop there. For other folks, they might need to do 2.5 milligrams and then redose that later in the day and then later in the day. But the point is that you, as it says here, start low and go slow, so that you, one, can get an idea of how something is affecting you before you dose again. And two, just so you can find that, again, that minimal effective dose without overshooting it and overdoing it. And this is, again, where journaling comes in really handy. So you can keep track of how much you took, when you took it, how you took it. You know, was it an edible? Was it a tincture? Was it a topical? Was it an inhalable? All of those things might work a little bit differently for you, but taking the time and titration slow approach helps you really dial into the exact amount you need to get the symptom relief that you desire without wasting money or making yourself feel unwell.
Well, speaking of feel, taking it daily, you'll have some general effects and maybe changes, but taking it daily, how safe is that?
Yep. Such an important question, especially because, you know, I think, you know, another common idea is that CBD is incredibly safe. There is no risk. You can take it without worry. And it is true that CBD is overwhelmingly safe, but there are some cautions that people need to be aware of. One, as it says here, it depends on the source, the processing and any additives. One of the really cool things about hemp and cannabis plants is that they're bioaccumulants, which means they clean the soil and the air around them. You know, hemp plants have been planted in places where there have been nuclear reactor accidents to help pull toxins out of the soil, which is great for the environment, but that's not the plant you would want to use if you're trying to medicate yourself. And so the source of plants is incredibly important. Whenever possible, people should be looking for organically sourced hemp products, because, you know, and they should have that, like, you know, that organic seal stamped on it, which is something that is done for hemp plants these days. And when it's grown organically, you can feel comfortable that it was grown in healthy soil, that it was grown without a lot of added chemicals or pesticides, etc. So it's really important to know where the source of that plant was and how it was processed. Another caution about CBD is it does seem to be the phytocannabinoid that interacts with drugs, that interacts with over-the-counter and prescription medications, and may interact with vitamins and supplements. So it is, you know, a common word of wisdom is any medication that has a warning on it for ingesting with grapefruit, you should also be concerned about CBD. And that's because CBD is metabolized through a few particular enzymes in the liver. Those particular enzymes are also responsible for metabolizing about 60% of drugs. And CBD is sort of the stronger competitor, meaning that if it's in the system at the same time as these other medications, it can slow the metabolism of those other medications and cause them to sort of build up in the blood system and possibly cause toxicity. Or in the case of blood thinners, if you have too much blood thinner, then maybe you're bleeding too much. So there are some concerns that people need to be aware of. If you are taking any prescription medications, you ideally your doctor would be able to talk to you about, you know, the safety of combining them with CBD. you know, when people do have to take certain prescription medications and they also would benefit from CBD and want to benefit from CBD, we will often help them sort of stagger the timing of their doses. You know, we might want to monitor their blood levels of drugs and adjust their dosing of those drugs to sort of account for the CBD's effect. I want to also throw in there, because I don't want people to get really scared. These are not interactions that we typically see in clinic. These are interactions that happen with typically very high doses of CBD. The only concern there is, as we said, CBD is in a lot of different places these days. So if you're taking a CBD shake and a CBD cookie and slathering CBD all over your body and doing, like, if you're doing a lot, if you're getting, you know, 500, 600 milligrams of CBD a day, then you definitely want to think about whether or not you're taking anything else that might interact. As we alluded to earlier, not all CBD products contain what they claim to contain, and despite, you know, the federal government legalizing, in quotes, industrial hemp at the end of 2018, the FDA is not regulating any of these products right now. It does not have any guidelines. It doesn't have any regulatory structure in place to make sure that products on the shelves are safe. And so it's very important, as Eliza said, to make sure you're buying products from companies that you can trust. Those companies will make their lab results available. They will have certificates of analysis, or COAs. You will be able to, you know, verify the source of their product and how it's processed and what's in it. And if a product or a company can't provide the information for you, you should not be using their product.
Good point. And I'm going to take this slide really quick, because I even wrote an article about this. I was a little bit shocked when I went onto certain websites, for example, Sephora, and it's talking about all these products with cannabis sativa in them. And then when you really look at it and you read carefully that label, it's just being used as a marketing ploy, because it's hemp seed oil or hemp oil. And hemp seed oil, hemp oil, that's been available at your grocery store, your natural foods store for years, but it doesn't contain CBD. And particularly hemp seeds, no CBD in there. Now, it has a lot of other benefits, omegas. It can be very, you know, good for you, if you will, but it's not CBD. So the test results, as you were talking about, leads us into the next slide, which is about finding quality CBD. If you could talk a little bit more about COAs, or certificates of analysis. And before you do, I just wanted to mention, I had mentioned True Potency earlier. I find this to be a really great resource if you are completely uncertain about a product, whether or not it has CBD, the amount that it says it has, that a True Potency is taking CBD products and testing them, paying to have them tested, third-party labs, in order to narrow down what they have in their catalog. So it's sort of a catalog. It's like a marketplace of CBD products, a variety of brands, but all of them have gone through rigorous testing by this company, which I find interesting. And like I mentioned before, Frontier Jackson, they have test results on their website as well. Anything else in terms of tips? Because I think we have one more slide before we move into Q&A. And I know that other people are hopefully coming up with their questions right now.
Yeah, so I mean, everything on this slide is 100% accurate. I hadn't actually seen True Potency before I saw this slide, and I went and checked it out. It's pretty cool. But yeah, a certificate of analysis is obtained when a company sends its product to a third-party lab to be tested, and then, you know, they can match it up with what they say is in the product. So always look for a COA so that you can verify that what is on a product label is actually what is in the product. But that also assumes that a product has a label. You won't be able to tell if a product is quality if it doesn't have a product label. And it should, you know, it should look very much like a nutrition label that you're used to seeing. It should say how much of each phytocannabinoid is in it, what is a serving size, how do you use it, what are the other ingredients in that product. And the other ingredients are really important. If you are somebody who is managing a health condition, there might be some product or some ingredients in certain products that aren't beneficial for your health. You might not want a lot of added sweeteners. You might not want dyes or fragrances or those kinds of things. And all of that should be listed on a product label. So sort of use some of the common sense you already apply to buying your food products or your personal health or wellness products, and apply that to CBD as well.
And again, a reminder, CBD companies are not required to do testing. So those that understand the importance of consumer comfort and safety are paying to have this testing done. And so it's an added expense for them. It's an added process that they have to go through. But those are the ones who are realizing that consumers are becoming more savvy and are concerned. And that's why we recommend you gravitate toward those that have their test results up on their website, that are clear that they do the testing. And you also mentioned this earlier about keeping a journal. We recommend this for whether it's cannabis or CBD or any plant medicine, really. How are you feeling? What are you taking? What is the form? How much of it? How do you feel afterward? And that helps you get to that. What is it called again? I want to call it the perfect dose, but there's a term.
The minimal effective dose.
Minimal effective dose. Yeah. Or perfect dose.
I know. I'm like, we need to rebrand that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to get to questions now. So what we do here is I come out of the slides and we turn our video back on, and Erica has been going through these questions and letting us know some of the questions that are out there. And then after this, a little bit of Q&A, we just have a few slides, including an offer from Frontier Jackson. I said I was going to show a few things really quick. I've got some gummies, really nice texture, a little bit of a fruity flavor. I always find CBD gummies, though, to be a little bit, it's not candy. It is medicine. And then speaking of pets, little pet treats. I have to say that my two little dogs have a lot of eczema, a lot of inflammation of the skin. And since I've been giving this to them, it really is clearing up. I use that as a gauge because they have so many allergies. Capsules, I personally don't like capsules because I don't like swallowing pills and capsules. So I really like the gummies, but I really like tinctures. This one is mixed berry. Mixed berry is not my number one choice. I really do go for more of the minty, although there is another one that is, there's a cardamom vanilla and a chocolate mint of a different company who we love, Vital Leaf. But mixed berry, it was very pleasant. And that's the thing. Sometimes they taste really funky. If you're not really used to the plant taste, it could be quite unappealing. But a mixed berry and a very light flavor, this was quite nice. So, questions? I got a little carried away, but I was excited because I had them on hand.
That looks super fun. Absolutely.
Erica, tell us.
Okay, Kathy, this is a quick one, so we'll start with Kathy's question. Is whole spectrum and full spectrum the same thing?
Whole plant, I would think, right? Whole plant.
It's a good question. Yeah, whole plant or whole spectrum and
okay.
Full. But yeah, I think people typically say whole plant, and technically they're not the same thing. So some folks, ourselves included, would say if you really want whole plant medicine, the only way to actually do that is to pull a bud off the plant and pop it in your mouth. Because as soon as you harvest the plant and it dries a little bit or is exposed to light or just time, you're starting to lose some of the components. Things are starting to be metabolized within the plant. And so technically, again, the only way to get whole plant is to pop the fresh thing in your mouth, or to juice it, which is actually a very increasingly popular way to consume cannabis, is to juice the raw plant. But full spectrum means through processing, as much of the original phytochemical content as possible has been retained. And so short of eating the raw plant right off the the ground, full spectrum is the best you're going to get.
Fantastic. Okay. Nicole has kind of a deep question. Okay. A friend was quizzing me. She's a mom and she's been having some anxiety, depression, mood swings, low energy. She believes it's hormone related. Any suggestions of products or strains, CBD only or CBD/THC combo, ? She would like a spray or oil form. Thoughts?
This is so complicated. So hormones and the endocannabinoid system are incredibly complicated. I have not mastered this yet because the interaction is incredibly complex, and it has to do with the time of your cycle, where you are in life, whether or not you're trying to get all of these things. It's actually a very complicated cycle. And so, without knowing what actually is going on with her hormones, it's very hard to say, oh, she would need CBD or CBD THC. It's hard to say. I mean, in general, this is somebody who I would say CBD would not hurt them. If she wants to try CBD, then by all means go for it. THC, same thing, like unlikely to hurt her. But, first things first, I would try to figure out what's going on with her hormone status before
Absolutely.
I throw a whole lot at her.
Yeah.
This is a really important question. I'm glad this was asked. What is the shelf life of CBD oil?
Oh, I don't know if I know that. To some extent, it depends on what it's like, how it's been processed. Is it in is it in an oil? Is it in an alcohol, which isn't that common, but it could be? Is it in an edible? Is it in a capsule? All of those different variables will affect its shelf life. So I don't know off the top of my head. I would refer somebody to the product label itself. It should have a best by date or a use by date. How you store it, where you store it, all of those things are going to impact whether it remains effective.
And light can affect the oil, and light can affect the plant. So keeping it in a darker place or a bottle. So looking at the Frontier Jackson one, it's an opaque bottle.
Yes.
I've seen amber bottles as well. I've also seen clear bottles, and I've always been a little bit concerned, and I keep them in a cool, dark cupboard.
Yes.
Of course, if it has THC, I keep it in a locked box. So keep in mind, light will change it. And eventually, oil does go rancid, but I think that the way it's processed, and I've always said, the more the product is processed, it tends to have a longer shelf life.
That's true.
Because it's in quite a different form. So I've had some of these, for 6 months or more, and I still find that sometimes you can tell by flavor. Also, when it's an oil, you can tell by flavor when it's starting to kind of go bad. But yeah, that would be really good to know.
I think this is a good question for the people that are just starting out and becoming familiar with CBD, although I'm not sure if we have an answer, to be honest. The question is, what should we expect to pay for quality CBD?
Oh, interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Depends on form, right? Depends on form, depends on potency.
Depends on what state you're in.
Yeah.
What state you're in.
Where
Depends on the market and how much
Depends on
you can get away with.
Yeah.
I've seen, since I do look at this a whole lot, I've seen I look at tinctures a lot particularly, and they can be anywhere from $65 to $195. Really depends on potency. You can have something that's 150 milligrams all the way to something that has 1,000 milligrams or more. So the more potency, it seems, they raise the price on that, because you're buying stronger and stronger medicine if you think about it.
Absolutely. So I'm going to raise this question because I think it's really important to have answered and to educate people. When using CBD tinctures and placing the drops under the tongue, how long do you need to hold it there? And is there a certain position in your mouth where it needs to be to absorb it well?
Yeah, it's such a good question because the most common mistake when taking tinctures is to not hold it into the mouth, is to not hold it in the mouth, is to put the tincture in your mouth and swallow it immediately, which for the most part causes it to act like an ingestible or an edible, which will behave in your system very differently than a tincture will. And so when people are using tinctures, they should drop it under their tongue. They could even rub it into their gums. They could rub it into their nasal septum even. But when dropping it under your tongue or rubbing it into your gums, you should try to hold the tincture in your mouth without swallowing for at least 30 seconds, but ideally for a minute or even up to 2 minutes. Because what that allows to happen is for your like sublingual capillaries, the little blood vessels in your mouth that are very absorptive, to start absorbing that therapeutic material, so it gets right into your bloodstream without having to go through your digestive system and metabolize through the liver before it gets into your general circulation. So 30 seconds to 2 minutes.
And that's interesting too, because I was saying I don't typically go for a mixed berry. Well, if you think about a mint, like a peppermint, and holding it in your mouth, it can be quite hot, if you will. But a mixed berry, that's one of the big differences I found, is that it was very gentle. And so I was able to easily hold it under my tongue, and it doesn't kind of get that sharper feeling of a peppermint. Although I still do like the peppermint. That was one thing I really noticed, is I could just hold it under and swish it. I also heard swishing around in your mouth as well.
Yep. That's what I do when I take a tincture. I like drop it on my tongue, and then I kind of like move it around. Yeah.
Ready for a last question? Yeah,
we're ready.
We're good on time. Okay.
How are you, Jessica? Can you stay just for a little while longer?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And remember, everybody who is here and everyone who has signed up and couldn't make it, we will be emailing you the recording. So if you do miss the tail end of it, you will still get all the information, including the offer from Frontier Jackson.
So nice. Okay. What is the mechanism that allows CBD to reduce anxiety? This is high-tech stuff.
Ooh, that is high-tech. So you may recall that I mentioned CBD works on at least 65 other receptor types. One of those receptor types is serotonin. It interacts with the serotonin system, and serotonin is one of those neurotransmitters that is very important for our mood. That's why, many of our antidepressant medications affect serotonin levels. And so CBD will interact with the serotonin system. That's one way that it can help to mitigate anxiety. And then it's interesting, the endocannabinoid system itself, like the cannabinoid receptors themselves, have a lot of the work they do is to sort of turn down signals of pain or stress or inflammation. So, sorry, I'm about to get a little too sciencey probably. I just realized. But some of those other systems that the endocannabinoid system works to turn down also will allow CBD to help reduce anxiety.
Oh, Erica, there's a question here that I wanted to address, because it was a statement I had made that was a little confusing. Victoria was saying, you mentioned that hemp oil that we're used to seeing is not sativa or not cannabis sativa. I'm confused by this. I was going to buy CBD derived from hemp. Okay, really quickly. So cannabis sativa is your plant. So if you know about science and botany, the plant is cannabis sativa. There's the cannabis sativa plant that has the high THC. It's a high resin plant. It has high THC, and that's where the cannabis products that we do that have THC, lots of THC, are derived from. Its sister plant or cousin plant, they kind of call it something different, is the hemp plant. It's also cannabis sativa. It's just the hemp plant, low resin, low THC to no THC, but high CBD content. The seeds of that hemp plant are used to create hemp oil or hemp seed oil. The seeds do not have CBD, and they do not have THC. They have omegas, they have other kinds of things, but not CBD or THC. So that is a big difference here, is A lot of companies are saying it's cannabis sativa. Well, technically it is cannabis sativa.
Exactly.
It's the plant. But the seeds are what we were using to derive all of these things from, and they did not have, and they do not have THC or CBD. So hopefully that cleared it up.
Yeah, I think that's important as a good customer warning, and why Ellementa vets, you know, these products to bring fantastic information. Fantastic. Okay. I got one more, a little complicated. Anne is asking, the terpenes beta-caryophyllene and myrcene are present in most cannabis. Do you have any idea what amount could begin to change how it affects the system? Interesting.
So these are terpenes. So this is not even a CBD question per se, unless you've got your full spectrum CBD and it has those terpenes in it, right?
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, I can't call to mind any studies looking at dosing of beta-caryophyllene or myrcene. So I can't quantify, I can't put a number on like the minimum amount required to have medicinal benefit. But certainly beta-caryophyllene and myrcene do tend to be some of the more abundant terpenes found in cannabis plants, whether hemp or marijuana. And in general, with most of these phytochemicals, you don't actually need a lot to have effect, particularly when you are using them in a full spectrum or broad spectrum product. In those products, less really is more. You can get a lot more effect with a lot less dosing because they're all sort of synergizing and working together. So I can't give you sort of a minimum amount needed, but the amount that is generally found in these products is therapeutically active.
Before we go back to the last couple of slides, there is a question which confused actually me a little bit. It says, what are the medicinal strains of hemp? And I don't think we talk a lot about hemp strains, right? We're talking, it's really the cannabis sativa plant that has the THC that has been bred to have many different qualities and many different chemical compound combinations that we talk about strains, and that they name them Purple Urkel and
Granddaddy, whomever.
Right. But I don't think we talk about strains from hemp. It is just the hemp plant. And the only reason we say industrial hemp is that's the name that it had been used. And hemp can be used for other things like fiber and fabric and biodiesel and
all kinds of things.
I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't like suddenly I was thinking, wow, strains of hemp.
No,
but that's not okay. We can leave our video on. I'm just going to quickly jump in and wrap this up. Any questions we didn't get to, please feel free to email them. We'll check out our website, ellementa.com, for answers to them. We'll be doing soon a podcast where we're going to take a lot of the questions that were asked but not yet answered on our webinars and start to answer them. But let me go back to reminding everybody that, let's see, I just blocked the view for myself, that you are getting a recording of this afterwards. So if you've registered, you get a recording. It takes about a week for us because we do a little bit of editing, but you will receive an email with that recording. You can find us at ellementa.com. If you do /groups, you'll see the Facebook groups that we have based on state. We also have one for Canada. Gatherings is where we have all of our in-person events listed that are coming up. We usually have anywhere from a dozen to 25 or more happening in any given month. And then Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. And where can we find you, Jessica?
We are most active on Instagram, so you can follow us on Instagram at the Knox Docs. So TheKnoxDocs. And you can also check out our website. It's drsknox.com.
Excellent. Special offer. I promised everyone a special offer from Frontier Jackson. 15% off by using Ellementa 15 when you make a purchase. So again, you'll get this by email to remind you with a link. So you can go to frontierjackson.com and find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Frontier Jackson. February, here's what's coming up. I can't believe it's already going to be February soon. We're doing a watch party. Now, we did a watch party last year with Ricky Lake, and we also did one with Wendy Borman. So this is going to be with Marisa Sturts of Healing Powers. It's a show that's going to be on Gaia TV at the end of this month, meaning January. So you'll be able to also watch some of her other segments, but we're going to be watching, it's about a 7-minute segment, Seniors in Cannabis, and then we'll talk to Marisa afterwards. That's on the 5th. And then Dr. Sheena Vanderploeg, I forgot to ask her how to pronounce her name. She is a naturopath, a naturopathic physician, and we'll be talking about cannabis, CBD, and intimacy, women's sexual wellness, sexual pleasure, and how cannabis and CBD can be very helpful to a lot of women. So please sign up, ellementa.com/webinars. And thank you, Dr. Jessica Knox. Thank you. Always a pleasure. So much good information. Really
I always
appreciate
have so much fun.
Good. I'm glad. And we try to be just uber informative. And we also try to stick to time. And now, since it's a little over, I hear my family coming. So we're going to wrap up. Thanks again, everyone. I'm Aliza Sherman, CEO of Ellementa. And Erica, thank you for the behind the scenes magic. And thanks to all of you for being here and for helping us spread good information about cannabis and CBD. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.